Hi, good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the last portion of our event today, which is our panel. I have the pleasure of being joined by some amazing recruiting and talent acquisition specialists, professionals, managers, really some fascinating and amazing organizations that are going to join us today. My name is Rachel Mitchell, and I am the Director of Business Development for TorontoJobs.ca, and I'm going to be the moderator of the panel today. We're going to talk all things strategies for job search success. So really excited that everyone could join us. And I really want to first start out by saying thank you so much to the panel for being here and for, giving up 30 minutes of your day. I know it's hard and you're probably on Zoom all day long. So for you being here, thank you very much for that. I'm sure our attendees appreciate it, and we certainly appreciate it at TorontoJobs.ca as well. So we're going to start out just by learning a little bit more about these awesome panelists on the platform today. And then we're going to dive in. We're going to talk about resumes, virtual interviews. We're going to look at everything from a recruiter's perspective. So hopefully it gives all of you some insight in terms of what you can be doing in your job search and gives you some strategies that you can implement after the event into your resumes and the way you're conducting your search. So really looking forward to it. We do have a chat happening. It's at the very right-hand side. It's called the stage. You'll see a stage button there. If anyone has any questions throughout the duration of the event, if you want to just ask a general question or if you have one specific to one of our panelists, feel free to ask it at any time. It's a very open discussion. We want you to get as much out of it as you can. So please feel free to put your questions in the chat if you have them as we go along here. So I am joined by Rebecca Sargent, who's the recruitment specialist at Markham Stouffville Hospital. Vanessa Presta, who's a talent acquisition, tech, and workplace culture for SoundHound Inc. And Cindy Chan, who's a talent acquisition and sourcing expert at Sourcinc. So thanks so much for being here. I'm going to start with Cindy, and we'll just kind of go around and introduce each panelist, and they'll talk about their organization and maybe how they got into recruiting. So we'll start with you, Cindy. Oh. Cindy, you might be muted. I can't hear you. I don't know if anybody else can hear you.
Yes. Can you guys hear me now?
I can hear you now. Perfect.
Okay. So hello, everyone. Pleased to meet you all. I would say my recruitment story started roughly about 15 years ago. And one thing that's very unique about me is I've been in recruitment on both sides at an in-house corporate recruiter and also on the agency side. And in addition to recruitment, I also have a side hustle where I do career coaching. I actually have a soft spot for new immigrants and also with recent graduates, and to help them kind of get their foot in the door into the Canadian job market.
Well, that's amazing. Your side hustle. That's great. I didn't know that. So we'll have to touch on that a little bit. So thanks so much for joining us, Cindy. And I look forward to picking your brain a little bit with your awesome experience in recruitment. And Vanessa, we'll move on to you if that's okay.
Hi, everyone. Yeah, thank you, Rachel. Thanks again for the opportunity. I'm really excited to chat today and share some ideas and strategies. A little bit about myself quickly. Right now, I'm working for a computer software company, so specializing in tech careers and tech recruitment. I started in HR, actually, so my story went from more of an HR generalist role and then started to specialize a lot in technical recruitment and now even more so in technical sourcing. So really reaching out to a lot of passive candidates and also, reviewing a lot of profiles that come inbound as well. So really excited to be a part of a company that's expanding globally. So, no matter what location as well, we have a lot of opportunities available. And I think, Rachel, we might have some time later to share careers page links. So looking forward to sharing that with everyone as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So just so everyone's aware, a lot of people on our panel are hiring today. So we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end, and they can share their careers pages and information as well. So thanks so much, Vanessa. Thanks for the intro and thanks for being here. And Rebecca, we'll end with you in terms of the introductions.
Thanks, Rachel. Hi, everyone. I'm Rebecca Sargent. So I'm now a senior recruitment specialist at Markham Stouffville Hospital. So we are a very busy hospital in the GTA, especially right now with everything going on. When I got started in human resources, I did an internship at another hospital, and I really enjoyed the healthcare atmosphere. So that's how I started out. And then I actually worked at an employment agency for a year. So kind of on the other side, helping people find jobs, looking at resumes and giving cover letter and interview tips. And then I went to Markham Hospital, where I started out as a human resources associate, where you kind of learn a little bit of everything in HR, and then I worked my way up to the senior recruitment specialist role here.
Well, that's great. Congrats on the progression. It sounds like it was pretty quick. That's amazing.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we're going to start out talking about resumes. So we've got 3 awesome recruiters that can give us some advice. Maybe we've got career coaches that, tell you about the formatting and the margins and things that you should do. But it's always great to hear from a recruiter. Everyone obviously is going to have different answers and ways that they read resumes or things that they're looking for. It also depends a lot on the industry. A tech resume is going to be, read a lot differently than a customer service resume. So I like that we come from healthcare, and Vanessa's more from the tech sector. So I really like the diversity that we have on the panel today. So maybe we can go around and kind of talk about what you look for on a resume and what your advice would be for someone that, a lot of times jobs are getting hundreds of applications, and it's the reality of probably more than 60% of jobs are getting a huge volume, especially now with a lot of people that are unemployed. So Cindy, maybe we'll start with you. What's your top advice for how someone can stand out, or what do you look for on a resume, like important features and things that people should include?
Mm-hmm. So I would recommend for job seekers, they would have 2 versions of their resumes. One would be a generic resume where it outlines all their strengths and experiences. Perhaps include a section where they have volunteered, or maybe even their personal interests. Because personally, I do look for those interests so that we can kind of start with an ice-breaking conversation, and then. I guess when I put on my recruitment hat, something specific that I'm looking for would be how this particular profile or resume matches the job description or the job specification that I'm seeking. So in that case, when a candidate is submitting their resume, I would say they need to give the resume some keywords, some tailored editing, so that it flesh out all the relevant experience that the job description is asking for, and it's reflected properly.
Yeah, that's amazing advice. It's so important, to show the employer what you can do, not just say I have amazing customer service skills, but how many calls did you take? How many were, how many minutes if you're working in a call center? There's all these, tracking and quantitative information and data that you can include on your resume to show that success. So definitely very important point there. So Vanessa, I'm going to ask the same question to you. What are you looking for on resumes? Is there things that you see on a resume that really jump out at you that people should implement? So just kind of looking for your advice and your take on the same subject.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll branch off Cindy's comment and then mention something additional. But I think that's super important, being aligned with what the business needs. So ensuring you've diagnosed that job description, right? And I'm sure a lot of recruiters can agree that you receive often, blasted resumes, maybe someone who's applied to many positions for that company, and the resume you receive is just not relevant to even the job that they might have applied to. So you really want to avoid doing that. You want to make sure you've really read that description and that your resume emphasizes the stuff that's relevant to the company. I think that'll help you succeed for sure. And a big thing I look at is emphasizing your interest. So to bring up the topic of a cover letter, I'm all for that, 100%, including a cover letter in every application and including a personalized message to that company. Not only the company, but maybe that position, and already giving, in your application a highlight of your extreme interest and your specific interest to that job. I think that helps you stand out, and it'll go a long way. Definitely something we prioritize and look for sure.
Yeah, that's a great point. And on cover letters, I mean, it's always a big question of, do I include it? Do I not include it? And I think it really depends too on the job that you're applying for. I mean, if it's a writing job, or if it's in marketing, or it's a social media type of role, or you need to show more of what you can show on a 2-page resume. It shows writing skills. It shows that it gives you the ability to research the company and also include that in the cover letter. There's a lot of mistakes, I think, that we see out there too on cover letters. Like, don't just have a generic cover letter that says "Dear Hiring Manager" with, whatever reiterates whatever your resume says. If you're going to have a cover letter, it's got to have that impact, like you're saying. You've got to show that you did the due diligence. You've got to, show your creative writing, and not just say, try to find a recruiter there. It might not even necessarily be the right one, but at least you showed you did some research to try to find a correct contact to properly address the cover letter too. So great point. Rebecca, how do you feel about cover letters? What do you think about, resumes that you're reviewing? I'm sure right now you're reviewing hundreds of resumes that it's on a daily basis. So what's your advice for our attendees?
We definitely are reviewing so many resumes a day. And I really emphasize what Cindy and Vanessa said. It's really about that relevant experience. I was actually asked to take a look at someone's resume today because they've said they've applied to, so many of our clerical jobs, and they couldn't understand, why they weren't getting any calls from us. We've looked at their resume for like 10 seconds and we instantly knew, okay, here's XYZ reasons why you're not being considered. The person, they're also going to school for a clinical position as well. So they had their education at their top, and they had their placement experience at the top. And it's not until you go to page 2 that you see that they're already working as a clerk at another place. So it's really about highlighting your relevant experience on the top, because we don't care about your clinical experience when you're applying to a unit secretary. It's not relevant, and it actually tells me that you're not looking to stay permanently. You just want your foot in the job now. So it's really highlighting that relevant experience. And we gave her some, we think, great tips. So hopefully next time she applies, she will be successful. With cover letters, I definitely agree with you, Rachel, that it really depends what the position is for. Some of the positions you don't necessarily need a cover letter, but some of them you really want to highlight your writing skills. And I have seen it come down to before that there was 2 strong candidates and a manager couldn't decide and said, who sent me a cover letter, because they've gone the extra mile and they've really put in the extra effort to get hired. So I'll go by who I'll consider people who've done the cover letter. So I have seen that, but it's so important to pay attention, because we've seen people who put other hospital names, Dear Mackenzie Health instead of Markham Stouffville. So it's really important to pay attention and to really highlight that position in your cover letter and resume.
Yeah, great point. And yeah, like you said, every job is different. Some specifically request that you include a cover letter, and if not, it's always a good idea to include it, as long as, like we're saying, it's properly implemented. So now we've kind of discussed resumes. Cindy, I know you shared when we were chatting just backstage about you have a great networking story, or you went through finding a job through networking. Because I think everybody kind of can do the resume part of it, but then it's what happens next, and how do I get through the application process, or what happens when I apply online. So once you get an application, there's a lot more things you can do. The hidden job market is, I think they say 80 to 9, I've lost track of the stat, but it's definitely more than 80% of all, it composes 80% of all job postings. So accessing the hidden job market, using LinkedIn, using social media, these have all become really top tools in your job search. So Cindy, you have a story about networking. Maybe you can share that with us, how you're going a little bit outside of the box to find a job. Because I think everybody really needs to start thinking that way, because online applications are kind of becoming less and less, and social media and networking are becoming, a huge way to find a job. So maybe you can share your story with us.
Yes, absolutely. So I think one thing that I would love to call out is, as a recruiter, in addition to reviewing resumes, we also would review social media profiles. So I think LinkedIn profiles, it's extremely important. In fact, I'm a strong believer that one could leverage their LinkedIn profile as their personal branding. And I often would look at a resume, but also, take a look at maybe feeds, notes, or maybe any type of like updates that this particular candidate has shared on their LinkedIn profile, just to see a different side of their personality and what they bring to the table. And in terms of networking, personally, I actually do appreciate candidates who actually go into the extra mile by sending us emails just to follow up, hi Cindy, I applied to a position so-and-so on XYZ. Just wanted to see if you might be open to have a discussion. Like I think this is gonna make the candidate stands out a little bit more, because it shows that they have done the extra effort in researching about the organization and expressing their interest in working with the company. And oftentimes it goes a long way. In fact, by doing this, it also gives you an opportunity to network with a professional who's working in the organization that's of your interest.
That's amazing. Yeah, networking is very important, and having your LinkedIn profile for keyword searches, because I'm assuming maybe Vanessa, you can touch on this. But how are recruiters finding people on LinkedIn? Is it keyword searches? Are you using groups? Are you, waiting for people to contact you? How are you using LinkedIn to find candidates?
Yeah, great question. All of the above from what you've mentioned. More specifically, I would say, especially as a technical sourcer, it really is those keywords. So if someone has a limited LinkedIn profile with relevant job titles, we'd still be able to find you. But the more and more details in your profile as well would help populate those results. So there's definitely keywords that we use to search, and then also through network, right? So certain connections or people that we are connected with who they know, and sometimes a lot of the time we're also receiving referrals through prospects, which is really great. So the more we can all get out there, connect with each other, attend great events like this, the better you build your network for when either you need to find a job now or in the future when you need to continue, job seeking. So I think that's a little bit on that, and more around standing out. I think, like you were touching upon, Rachel, I really believe job seekers nowadays can't rely on just a single job application. I think a lot of us need to continue to be eager and show that interest in the role. So a lot of it is follow-up messaging, sending thank you emails once you've received those interviews, and really keeping that persistence without too much hesitation. I often hear from others, maybe not in recruiting, just about worrying that maybe messaging is too much, maybe it looks bad, and they sort of hesitate on how it'll look. And I'm a believer of the opposite. I think it's great. I think it's someone eager. When we need a job and we're looking for a job, we want a job badly. And I think seeing that interest is super helpful.
Yeah, I think if the candidate specifically matches, what the recruiter's looking for, I've seen, and I've been in the industry for 15 years, and a lot of people will just say, help me find a job, or I need a job, or can you get me a job? And it's like, but I don't know what you're looking for. The delivery and the way you've approached me is just not, I can't really help you. But if someone was to come and say, I was on TorontoJobs.ca, I noticed you're looking for a social media coordinator. Here's how I fit the bill, or, here's how I match all the qualifications. Or if you're just sending me an introductory request, just something short and sweet about, I saw a posting, I think I'm a great fit. Something like that's going to go a lot more, it's going to go a long way with a recruiter, as opposed to just help me find a job, or I need a job, or those types of things. So I think you got to be really careful when you're connecting with people to make sure that you add that value, or make sure that they know exactly what you're reaching out for, so that you can make that quality connection as well. Because I've seen, a lot of things over 15 years and messages, and there's effective ways to do it, and lots of articles and things that you can read online to help you out with that. Rebecca, do you use social media a lot, LinkedIn, and do you rely on online applications for the most part?
Starting to use social media more, especially because we've been realizing that we can't wait for candidates to come to us. It really depends on the position as well. I mean, like a clerical position, we're still getting 300, 400 applicants.
Wow.
So we have to go out there for positions. We've had up to 700 applicants for some positions lately. But then for other positions, like a registered nurse, we've only been getting, for some of them, 1 to 10 applicants. So it really depends on some of the positions. We're having to be more active in order to find the candidate pool. So we've started to use LinkedIn more. We're working with our public relations team, so they've started doing posts for us on Instagram and LinkedIn and Facebook. We've also started using some sourcing agencies as well to help us search for candidates on LinkedIn. They've also been searching for candidates on Facebook for us, creating ads as well to try and really be more active and reach out to those candidates that we've been having challenges reaching.
That's great. Yeah, absolutely. So make sure your social, especially Facebook, because I have heard, especially on these events, a lot of recruiters are starting to use Facebook a lot more because they have that demographic information you can put in your workplace. Like you can narrow those ads down right to where someone works if you wanted to, because most Facebook profiles, they have where they work. So be very careful on your social, your Facebook, especially to keep it, somewhat professional, or hide things that, you might not want a potential employer to see, because employers are looking on Facebook. It's becoming increasingly more as I, do these events and hear about people's recruiting processes. So I just want to kind of finish off the conversation about, before we get into positions that you're hiring for, virtual interviews, because they were becoming a thing. Video resumes were kind of becoming a thing. It was a slow growth. Video resumes came out probably 10 years ago and never really stuck. And then virtual interviews started to become a thing with recruiters. I was seeing more and more people, doing pre-screening via FaceTime or WhatsApp, or using Skype was a big one. I haven't really heard about Skype too much lately. But now that's 99% of interviews are being done for the most part. I mean, essential positions are probably still somewhat in person. But virtual is now kind of here, and I think it's going to stick. We might see some hybrid. Your first interview is virtual. Your second one might be more in person when things open up. But Cindy, what are you seeing with applicants? I'm sure you've been doing a lot of virtual interviews. What are some tips and tricks and things that people should be doing to prepare for those virtual interviews?
Mm-hmm. So one thing that I would love to encourage the audience is I am actually seeing more and more organizations that are receptive in video interviews. And it's no different than going to an interview in person. I think one needs to be fully prepared. In fact, I have a funny story to tell. I was interviewing a candidate the other day, and this particular candidate was, wearing a really great top, but not the bottom. And it's interesting because sometimes how video angles, you can see not only your upper body but perhaps your lower body as well. So I think when it comes to dress code, definitely don't cut the slack. Put on the full attire in case if anything happens.
Yes, that's a very good point. We've seen some funny things online. I've seen some funny things about things that have been seen in the background of people's Zoom and things like that. So it's a very good point. If you're going to do an interview, maybe dress the whole part instead of just the top part, for sure. A tip that I have that I took away from actually one of our speakers at an event a few months ago, it's really hard to make eye contact, obviously, with someone that you're having a conversation with virtually, and it's best to look in the camera, but it's so hard to look at the camera when I have 4 of you on the screen and myself and I'm distracted. So someone told me to put a really bright sticky note beside my camera, so it always makes me look at the camera so that I can make sure I'm having eye contact with people I'm speaking to. So that was an awesome tip that I learned, because it is hard to know where to look, or you want to look at yourself as your natural instinct, but then you're looking down kind of thing. So that was a good tip that I have. What about you, Vanessa? What are you looking for in your virtual interviews? What are some tips that you might have for our attendees?
Absolutely. It's funny, a quick I guess trend I'm noticing is I tend to do a lot of my screens. They are based globally, so sometimes with folks in Canada or maybe Europe or elsewhere. And I'm noticing a lot of people go on video a lot more now than prior to the pandemic. So even if my camera's not on, maybe they're comfortable now with video calls more than they used to be. But that's just something I'm noticing. In terms of tips and tricks, yeah, still similar to before, maintaining that eye contact. I think especially over video is important. You know, we don't see what's around you in the space, so trying not to obviously turn your head. I've had, you know, a lot of candidates do a full interview like this just because they, you know, they think it's not in person. They don't need to maintain those in-person habits. So remembering eye contact is just as important. And really preparing what you need out of an interview, I think, is now more important than ever. Just simply because when that video call ends, when the time is up, it's over, right? There's no more exit chats. There's no similar to employees. There's no more hallway chats. So anything you really want to get out of the interview is very important for candidates, just as it's important for interviewers who need to ask all the right questions. You need to make sure you, in that given time, are able to ask the priority questions that you've prepared. So just making the most of the allotted time is something to consider. And then another point would be around connection, right? Listening well. It's hard enough when there's overlap or interruptions, which I think recruiters are trying to be considerate of. But just making sure you'll have that, you know, great connection, internet connection as best as you can, and listening well so that, you know, you're both giving each other the time to speak with no other assumptions being made throughout the call.
For sure. And another big point, I think, is also, you know, accepting the interview request, because typically, you know, you'd get an email with here's your details and people would assume, but, you know, now we're sending out virtual invites and a lot of people aren't accepting them, or they're not practicing the technology first. So, you know, they go to click on the link 2 minutes before the interview, but they don't have Microsoft Teams. So now they're trying to download Teams and they're telling the recruiter, oh, I didn't have Teams, so you got to really make sure that you have the app, or, you know, you have the proper tools to use the technology, because every company is not using Zoom. They're using maybe their own portal, or they're using Microsoft Teams. So get used to it, maybe register, send an invite to your friend, practice an interview so that you know exactly how to use that specific platform that recruiter is using, because there's nothing worse than logging in a minute beforehand and not knowing how to call it or the password, or, you know, those types of things. So, you know, make sure that, because that also shows that you're unprepared. So really, you got to prepare yourself for those types of things. So we have a couple minutes left. Rebecca, did you want to add anything to virtual interviews before we wrap up that topic?
I would just also say have a good space to see the interviews as well, especially in the beginning of pandemic. We had people doing it in bed, which is not a good impression for our managers. Whenever someone's video is off, they always ask for the video to be turned on. And we found, like, the other day we had someone who interviewed in their car, and the manager were not happy because, you know, they want a quiet, private space. But we also understand, you know, the candidates, they just really want to be available for the interview. So, you know, whether they have to do it in their car. So just being really mindful of, as best as you can, get that quiet, private space as well for the interviews. And let us know if you can't show up. I just did circuit interviews, which means like speed dating, where candidates rotate. We were supposed to do 12 interviews, and 3 of our candidates just didn't show up and didn't tell us anything that happened. Things happen. You can't show up, but just let the recruiter know, so that way we can reschedule you if you're still interested.
Absolutely, because it's already hard enough to get to the interview phase, so you don't want to, you know, limit your chances that way. Well, thank you so much for all of that information. I mean, we gave a lot of tips. Hopefully, you guys took a lot away from the conversation. Give all of our panelists an opportunity to share the careers that they're looking for, and maybe just share a link in the stage chat of your careers pages. So maybe we'll start with you, Cindy, if that's okay.
I actually just started a new position this week on Monday. So what I would love to encourage everyone is to keep an eye out on my LinkedIn profile, as I will be, you know, putting out job posting, not even for my company, but, you know, including in my greater network for updates.
That's great. That's perfect. And maybe if you could share your profile, that would be great. And I see some candidates are starting to share their profiles as well, which is awesome. How about you, Vanessa?
Awesome. Yeah, I'll share my the SoundHound careers page in the chat. I'm always specifically myself as well looking to connect with interested talent. So feel free to, I'm living on LinkedIn, so feel free to contact me as you wish. Mention this event. I'll definitely keep an eye out. Otherwise, I've pasted my careers link, so check it out. Definitely primarily engineering roles, but we do have a lot of non-technical needs as well. So everything from business development, back-end development, front-end development. So definitely take a look when you can.
That's perfect. Thank you so much. And Rebecca, maybe if you want to share your LinkedIn or your careers page or whatever you feel comfortable with.
Yeah, I just shared my careers page, and feel free to also connect with me on LinkedIn. And we're healthcare, so we have a variety of positions. It's not just registered nurses and PSWs. We're also looking for environmental services and food service and maintenance and clerical, pretty much almost any positions. We're hiring a variety. I think we have about 170 positions that our hospital's looking to fill right now. So
wow. Well, thank you for all that you're doing to keep us all safe. That's amazing. Hospitals deserve a lot of recognition right now. So thanks very much for that. And thanks to all of you for being here. Thanks to our panelists for their time. You guys were awesome. You gave so much great information to everyone. Hopefully everyone had a great experience with today's event. Thanks to all of our speakers that were here earlier as well. Thank you to Cube Packaging and First Student for being featured exhibitors on the event today. Definitely check out their careers pages as well. And I just wanted to mention a few upcoming events before we sign off. So we have a virtual recruiters panel happening on May 26th. We have our tech career fair, so it's just for tech recruiting on May 27th. And then we have another virtual career fair, just like this one on June the 29th. But that's more of just an actual job fair without panelists and speakers. So it's more of a hiring event. So those all can be found on TorontoJobs.ca/news. So just on our blog or just TorontoJobs.ca. It's easily found on our website. So again, thank you so much to everyone for being here. We really appreciate it. And I hope everyone has a great afternoon and good luck in your job search. And thanks again to our panelists.
Thank you.
Bye.